A few days ago, I received a package in the mail. The box appeared normal, standard postmarkings, carefully wrapped, but stamped with an unusual logo I'd never seen before. Today, we're going to be diving into the contents of this package together in order to unravel the mystery of the Field Studies Institute. Let's explore the strange world of Division X and the anomalies that originate from somewhere else entirely. Inside the box, we uncover 7 unique artifacts. A lanyard for a location called the Moonshot Motel, an informational card for so-called supersonic tours, a packet labeled Field Studies Institute with a cassette tape labeled Supersonic Tours Audio Guide 1999 inside, 2 distinct forms, a cassette media playback requisition form and a Form 17D, transient media interference form, both from said Field Studies Institute. And lastly, an SCR-75 stereo cassette player. Each of these artifacts are crucial for understanding the wider narrative in play, so let's start with the forms. Transient Media Interference Form, Form 17D of the Field Studies Institute. This atypical document from the strange organization discusses so-called transient media, which are remnants of apparent space-time deviations. Let's first look at the informational box on the right. While rare, improper handling of media near specific locations or systems within the building can lead to interference caused by remnants of a space-time deviation. While this can happen with any media, this form is intended for use only when that interference is believed to have occurred on media of a space-time deviation origin. With the information available, it appears that this organization deals with objects that likely originate from outside our standard space-time continuum, whether these be from other dimensions, other time periods, or parallel worlds or timelines is still to be seen. Next, the box labeled Describe the Space-Time Deviation Observation in Detail provides more insight into the specific object being discussed and how exactly it is considered a space-time deviation. Checked out Object ID 048125 for use in 2. Transient object originally included information on Side A only. Upon further inspection, remnant message found on Side B. Unknown cause. No proximity to any prominent source of interference. Time spent outside a chamber was minimal. The box is discussing the cassette tape in particular, noting that information appeared on both Side A and, curiously enough, also contained remnant audio on Side B. Other information on the form gives more hints to the object itself and the mysterious Field Studies Institute. In the department box, we see the Division X box marked, indicating this division of the Field Studies Institute likely deals with anomalies in the United States. In this case, the anomaly dealt with is a kind of space-time deviation. On the topic, the date of origin for the cassette tape is marked 1999, with the date of transience marked March 28, 1974. This seems to indicate the cassette tape traversed backwards in time, landing in the year 1974 from an unknown time in 1999. Outside of these bits of information, that is it for 17D. The next document, the Cassette Media Playback Requisition Form, gives more insight into the safety procedures of the Institute and Division X. As stated, we're working with an SCR-75 stereo cassette player. The Institute advises against using the device in the Temporal Lab, the R&D wing, and any spaces occupied by employees assigned to Division X. Why not around Division X employees is unclear, but appears to indicate the changed nature of Division Xers due to their repeated exposure to these space-time deviations. The notes also state, to avoid interference caused by the remnants of a space-time deviation, do not use the equipment within 10 meters of all copy machines, printers, office phones, or other communication-focused technologies. These deviations can cause electronic disturbances. Supersonic Tours Informational Card, Spring 1999. Launch into adventure and experience the mysterious supersonic territory. A missile launching into space with a twinkling star in the distance. all while spectators watch on a sandy beach. The back of the brochure gives us insight into this supersonic territory mentioned on the front. Supersonic tours themselves are top-rated guides through the mysterious wilderness of the supersonic territory. This vast stretch of Florida's eastern and southern exclusion zones present a life-changing opportunity to explore more than 20,000 miles of diverse flora, fauna, and unexplained phenomena. You'll see things you never thought possible, such as the Moonshot Motel, home of the Other Side experience. You'll explore the remains of an old theme park and experience the effects of time dilation firsthand. You'll even step foot on the soft sands of Florida's Space Coast, home of the now abandoned Original 6 launch facilities from the Golden Age, like RSO Station and the Kennedy Space Center. The eastern and southern exclusion zones. These two regions make up the supersonic territory, a collection of anomalous areas mutated by some kind of event that occurred in this Earth's history. The mention of a diverse array of flora, fauna, and unexplained anomalies is reminiscent of various media, most specifically the Southern Reach Trilogy and A Roadside Picnic. The mention of exclusion zones and unexplained phenomena is pulled from the Strugatsky brothers' science fiction classic, wherein interloping aliens leave behind multiple zones filled with strange phenomena, bizarre artifacts, and cosmic secrets lying deep within their borders. At the same time, the region used, along with the mention of diverse flora and fauna, seems to be inspired by the Annihilation series, both the original novels and the film adaptation. Included in the informational card is reference to the Moonshot Motel, the lanyard that is also included in the box. The lanyard adds additional layers to the mythology, quoting a Kali Zaman. These vessels are mere projections, and through our connection to the universe, we may all live beyond this reality. The flip side of the lanyard simply states, the Other Side experience, one of the so-called unexplained phenomena that exists within these exclusion zones. This one providing pathways to other planes of existence, to other dimensions, and possibly to other timelines. Time dilation is directly mentioned, indicating that the space-time deviation artifacts likely originate from these anomalous regions, including the cassette tape we've received. Additionally, the exclusion zone also encompasses the facilities formerly used for space launches. Facilities like the Kennedy Space Center are mentioned, but also the RSO Station, a station that does not exist in our reality. Curiously enough, RSO stands for Resident Space Object, a natural or artificial object that orbits another celestial body, in this case, Earth. This could indicate that this station in particular launched to a specific RSO, though this is speculation at this point. Lastly, we have the Supersonic Territory Audio Guide 1999, Side A and Side B. Let's listen to the audio of Side A. Side A of the tape features an audio guide to the supersonic territory, discussing specifically the nature of the exclusion zone and what the tourist should expect on their third day.
Good morning. Welcome to the third day of your journey through the supersonic territory. I hope the included breakfast was delicious and that you're ready to venture further into this vast wilderness where you will see things you never thought possible. I'm so glad you chose Supersonic Tours to be your guide through Florida's exclusion zones. First, a quick recap. As you learned yesterday, the exclusion zones, informally known of course as the supersonic territory, were once home to millions of residents. In the 1970s, an explosion of industry took root within and surrounding Cape Kennedy, but was followed by expansion in all directions over the next decade. Facilities to house and launch space-bound vehicles dotted the majority of the Floridian landscape, and in 1979, a government order created the eastern and southern exclusion zones. Of course, rumors abound regarding the creation of the zones and the high concentration of unexplained phenomena that still take place within the border. Throughout our journey into this vast territory, we may even see scientific expeditions venturing deep into the zones to conduct experiments, collect samples, or perform other scientific endeavors. If we do, please do not speak with or otherwise engage with the expeditions. It's best that we leave them to do their work uninterrupted. With that said, please feel free to relax and enjoy the sights of the supersonic territory. Hello again. I hope you've enjoyed the sights and sounds so far on our journey. As we're just a couple of minutes away here today, our first stop brings us to the Moonshot Motel, a place unlike any other. Here in the supersonic territory, there are many places where you can experience the strange and mysterious phenomena that the zones have become famous for, but nothing is quite like this. Within the motel, there exists a special place, a room that is unlike any other. It is a window into another world, another dimension, another reality. Naturally, naysayers believe it to be an illusion, a trick, or at worst, a hoax. I implore you to dismiss those notions and believe what you may consider to be impossible. Slow your mind, breathe deeply. Take in all that you see and form your own opinion. If you need it, there are restrooms within the building, along with a snack bar with light refreshments and small sandwiches. I highly recommend the tuna. There's also a small souvenir shop with postcards and other keepsakes to remember your journey. Please be careful exiting the bus and return within 1 hour. Thank you.
In the beginning, this region of the United States followed a path similar to the one we've experienced: the space race, the development of launch facilities, and overall industrial expansion. The key difference, however, is the creation of the Eastern and Southern Exclusion Zones in 1979, likely in an effort to prevent the spread of and public interaction with the anomalies in this region. At this point in history, scientific expeditions are still regularly conducted in an effort to study and understand these zones. However, we still don't know what caused these zones, but given the heavy government involvement, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a man-made incident not dissimilar to other exclusion zones in media. Though if the inspiration from the Southern Reach and Roadside Picnic follows, then we might see a more supernatural or cosmic explanation for the zone. In said zone, we receive more clarification on the Moonshot Motel, specifically on the nature of the other side experience. According to the audio guide, the Moonshot Motel houses a singular room that purportedly looks into another reality, or is in actuality another reality itself. Beyond this statement, we've yet to receive solid confirmation on what lies beyond the veil. What does it mean to be a window? What lies beyond said window? What exists inside the Moonshot Motel? On the opposite side of the cassette tape is a second piece of audio. This audio, described as a remnant of a space-time deviation origin, is completely different from that of the tour guide, distorted, garbled, and near nonsensical. Given the fact that the Moonshot Motel is an anomaly in and of itself, I wonder if a traversing tourist grabbed this audio from somewhere else entirely, the sounds imprinting onto this tape. Rest assured, any reversed audio you hear is simply repetitions of lines already said. Let's take a listen to side B.
It all happens at once. My body becomes a collection of molecules. Now, wasn't it that hard? Blood, bone, flesh, soul, stretched out like a silly putty, and my feet are 1,000,000 miles away. Now, wasn't it that hard? Fingers are long tentacles. Black shirts. I was landing over. It all happened at once. Now, wasn't it that hard? The elevator doors open. I know this place.
Side B contains some perplexing comments and observations. At first listen, the mention of it all happening at once, and the body becoming molecules as it stretches out, feet stretching away from the head and fingers becoming long tentacles. It sounds as though the narrator is describing falling through a black hole. The all-at-once portion could either be referencing their fall into said black hole, or even the creation of the black hole itself as a star goes supernova. Their body becoming stretched out, warping all at once, before winding up somewhere else entirely. As elevator doors open, and the narrator recognizes the location. Perhaps she's been transported somewhere similar but entirely new, a world parallel to her own. With the references in the Moonshot Motel about interdimensional viewings, maybe we're hearing someone recalling their transience, or describing it in real time. As one final note, a card is left on the inside of the box, warning us of the transient objects inside, the cassette tape, a product of a space-time deviation. And with that, the contents of the box are set aside for now. After receiving and opening the package, the next step in the investigation was to scour the internet for any media relating to the Field Studies Institute, and the source was found: the Field Studies Institute website, fieldstudiesinstitute.org. The landing page uses the same logo found on the box and inside the package itself. A request to enter the databank is on screen. Clicking it opens up the organization's database. Stylized like an older internal system, the internal data archives of the Field Studies Institute adds crucial lore to the unfolding narrative. Videos, web pages, internal documents, interactive media, all are on the site, as well as an in-progress section indicating that the website is still being updated. At the top, the databank abstract reads as follows. This databank contains transient objects from... These objects arrived in local spacetime and were collected between 1970 and the present. Relevant internal documents may also be present. For more information, please consult your employee handbook. Below, files are listed inside the 00 Interior Overture system. Various dates are listed next to these files. I'm unsure of the best way to relate this narrative, so I've chosen to present them in the order of their date of origin and progress from there. This takes us all the way back to July 2nd of 1967. (026189) Allegory Chamber. Clicking on the file opens up a webpage discussing a Moonlander internal report from July of 1967. 2 additional images from the mission report are included on the page. The background of the item states the document in question is the technical results of an unmanned Surveyor 3 mission to the lunar surface, which was launched on April 17, 1967. While the document itself is not a transient object, it contains crucial information that kickstarted the events that led to the formation of the Field Studies Institute. Surveyor 3 Mission Report. Part 1. Mission Description and Performance. July 1967. Page 112. Analysis has indicated that the direct cause of the problem, that being a disturbance in Surveyor's 3 landing procedure, was the suspected basic cause of the signal processing failure is related to the location of the anomaly. Sufficient ionization may have entered the KPSM, resulting in the lander bouncing upon touchdown. As a result of the special sequences to investigate this problem and the anomaly, it was found that the power system was normal, and the problem was confined to the signal processing system. More television picture glare occurred on Surveyor 3 as compared to Surveyor 1. This was especially true for pictures. Surveyor 3 was equipped with a modified sunshade to minimize glare, but due to the location of the anomaly, many of the early pictures had high levels of glare. During the initial lunar landings back in the 60s, some kind of unknown anomaly appeared on the lunar surface that disrupted the landing of Surveyor 3. Additionally, the problems were confined to the signal processing system. Given that the audio guide from 1999 contained remnant audio, it isn't too surprising that this anomaly caused interference in the signal processing system, as well as whatever signal the anomaly sent out disrupted its regular operation. This also seems to be the first time the United States government had come into contact with any kind of supernatural phenomena, or at least in current written accounts. The following entry labeled Rat Adaptation provides more information on the exact nature of the anomaly and the governmental response. While not a transient object as well, this documentation from November 27, 1969 details the governmental response to the lunar anomaly. Inside, the internal archive details a briefing sent to one Dorothy Ross, requesting her participation in the government-led Project Soma, a special access program created by the Department of Defense after discovering the anomaly on the lunar surface in 1967. Following the end of Project Soma, the 5 remaining members of the Special Access Program created what we know now as the Field Studies Institute. Attached to the databank are a series of images of confidential information regarding the lunar anomaly. The initial packaging, while redacted, still contains some information. An address, 153 Pine Street, can be made out on the DoD package. Inside is a note to Dorothy Ross, a classified briefing to Project Soma, and a key to room 177 of the Moonshot Motel. The note mentions the discovery of the lunar anomaly in April of 1967, the creation of Project Soma as a result to study said anomaly, and arrangements for travel to the Moonshot Motel, of which a key is provided. The document, prepared for by A.C. Duvall and an M. Ford, goes into detail. An image of the anomaly is provided on the inside of the briefing, along with a diagram of the lunar touchdowns, and an introduction to the project. The introduction reads as follows. The lander's descent radar was focused by what was determined to be an anomalous object of unknown origin, which will likely cause the issue. While there were other scientific objectives to be completed, the primary objective of the mission was the retrieval of the object, which was successful. Details of the nature of the object, such as its exact size, composition, and origin, are currently under investigation. Whatever anomaly the Surveyor 3 encountered on the lunar surface has been collected and likely taken back to Earth. Given the anomalous nature of the Moonshot Motel, specifically the Other Side experience, it's likely that the motel became an instrumental location for the studies of Project Soma, of which Dorothy Ross and Dr. Arthur Rees are core members of. Whether C. Duvall and M. Ford are a part of this program or simply engineers behind the briefing are yet to be seen. It's likely the original anomaly was housed here at some point, leading to the intense distortion of reality to the point of ripping into another plane of existence inside this room, which is likely room 177. The name Soma could refer to 2 distinct ideas. One is the ancient Greek definition for the body, meaning the project is dealing with the whole of some concept, likely reality and space-time, maybe even the body itself, with these anomalies as necessary pieces for figuring out the wider whole. It is also fitting given the remnant audio discussing their body distorting itself as they traverse through some other plane of existence, returning to this idea of the self and the body. The other idea is the Brave New World iteration of Soma, that being a recreational drug used to increase happiness and complacency amongst the population of the world state. It should also be noted that the book also uses a modified calendar, taking place in 632 AF, after Ford, who also shares a name with M. Ford. Whether this is an intentional reference or a complete coincidence is still to be seen. (1969) Shadow on a Mountaintop. Shadow on a Mountaintop is a rather short database entry. It concerns the short lifespan of the Ephemera danica, a common species of mayfly, and how it was used as a specimen during the study of the lunar anomaly during Project Soma. Later studies were also completed in a temporal lab, likely during the era of the Field Studies Institute. Beyond this information, little is known about the exact nature of these experiments. However, given the unknown properties of the lunar anomaly outside of possibly ripping open portals into other realms, and given the usage of a temporal lab, the scientists were likely studying to see if the lunar anomaly had time distortion capabilities. If mayflies live longer than a few days, then the test would indicate the presence of time dilation. (1972) Hollow Ether Needles. This 1972 entry details an internal memorandum sent out in August of 1972 that informed staff of a completed investigation into the behavior of the second-floor copy machine. The note mentions said investigation, noting that the copy machine's unusual behavior is due to an unspecified, likely an unknown anomaly at the then-present time. However, the note also mentions avoiding engaging with any attempted communications from the copy machine, once again pointing to space-time deviations coming in the form of attempted communications of some kind. Why signals are being caught in the other technological devices is unclear, but based upon what we've heard in the audio guide Side B, the sources likely originate from those who've fallen through the gaps of reality itself, echoes of those lost and those already found. The other section of the database notes that, at the time of writing the memo, studies regarding the termination of and its effects were not conclusive, though research on the topic was underway within Division X. It is now known that the behavior of the second-floor copy machine was due to the remnant of a space-time deviation. Firstly, by 1972, Project Soma has been closed and the Field Studies Institute opened in its place. Why Project Soma has been shuttered is unclear, but some event must have taken place at the Moonshot Motel in order for the project to be closed and for the motel to become as anomalous as it is. Secondly, by this point in time, space-time deviations were not yet understood, leading to much confusion regarding the copy machine's strange messages. Most importantly, the procedure section of the database mentions that this document contains references to communication from. The usage of two redacted words here seems to imply a name, a first and a last. Communication from a singular individual. And given that the Institute knows this person by name, it means they've either received communication from this person before, they knew them prior to their slip into the other side, or even a combination of both. However, in contrast, the other section also uses a double redacted sentence, which is likely referencing the lunar anomaly or another anomaly of some kind. Yet, I'm still not fully convinced this isn't talking about a singular person, especially after what we heard in the audio guide from 1999. (1975) After the flood. The databank entry from April of 1975 contains crucial information regarding the events that took place at the Moonshot Motel, at the collapse of Project Soma, and the subsequent creation of the Field Studies Institute in its absence. Contained in this archive are photographs of an Institute employee handbook from 1975. The background section notes that this handbook details the founding of the Institute, its origins, the nature of the metaphysical anomalies that take place within the Arthur Reese building, and the Institute's dealings with transient objects. Inside the handbook, we get a look at the origins of the Institute and the protocol for communications as a result of space-time deviations. The handbook starts off by mentioning that an 8-person collective were invited to participate in Project Soma. Arthur Reese, Alice Foriella, Amelia Haydock, Matilda Remlinger, Dorothy Ross, Carlos Scarf, Todd Tilzer, and Alla Trenchard made up the original 8 members of Project Soma, with each member making up one of the markings on the Institute logo. We also see that the Institute was created in 1970, indicating that Project Soma was relatively short-lived. Additionally, the photo on the right showcases what is now known as the Arthur Reese Building, the laboratory that became the meeting place of Project Soma in the final months of 1969. On December 31st of 1969, an event occurred that led to the many documented events that appear unexplainable to the outside viewer. These events are typically mild in nature. A document on a copy machine, a strange phone call, remnant audio on a cassette tape, all are remnants of space-time deviations. The Institute also emphasizes the importance of not communicating with these remnants, going so far as to terminate employees who do. The handbook finally gives us insight into the creation of the Field Studies Institute, what led to the collapse of Project Soma, and information of these remnant communications from space-time deviations. First, we see Dorothy Ross and Arthur Reese as returning names from the Rat adaptation briefing from 1969, along with several other members of the original Project Soma team. Based upon what the second page provides, some catastrophic event occurred on December 31st, 1969, that led to the dissolution of Project Soma, the space-time deviations, the transient objects, the exclusion zones, and likely all other anomalies seen in the exclusion zones following said event, especially given the page's name as After the Flood. It's likely this event originated from the lunar anomaly brought back to Earth, but to what extent or magnitude is yet to be revealed. As an additional note, the Institute's clear stance on communicating with these signals, transmissions, and audios raises some questions. Why does the Institute refuse to allow communication? Will something happen should individuals communicate? Is that what led to the original event in 1969, causing instability in spacetime? Or do they know what's on the other side and fear what will happen if they're heard, following the Dark Forest hypothesis line of thought? Perhaps we'll learn more in the future. (1975) Halcyon Violation. The August 7th, 1975 entry, Halcyon Violation, differs drastically from previous entries. Rather than simply containing photographs or scanned documents, Halcyon Violation includes the fourth part of the Institute's now-defunct orientation film. This film in particular discusses the recovery of transient objects following a space-time deviation, and most notably, gives more insight into what these objects are, how the Institute responds, and where transient objects can be found. Let's take a look.
You've reached film number 4 of your Field Studies Institute orientation. Please refer to page 10 of your employee handbook for accompanying documents. Throughout this film, we will discuss the nature of transient objects. We'll learn how they are located through their distinct electromagnetic signature and the proper handling, cataloging, and storage of such objects. The first transient object that we are aware of first appeared in 1970, and many more have arrived since. The Field Studies Institute has made the retrieval and study of these objects a top priority. As a recovery technician, your role is vital to the success of the Field Studies Institute and the safety of the world. While many transient objects may appear to be from the future, they have a far stranger origin, a space-time deviation. Deviation omega is the result of experiments on anomaly OBA01 that took place during Project Soma on December 31st, 1969. Transient objects may appear as typical, even mundane items that you may come across throughout a normal day. A coffee mug, perhaps, a book, even a radio. But consider for a moment the contents of the book. Does it describe a recent history that you're unfamiliar with? Does it discuss world events from a seemingly impossible future? You may be surprised at the number of transient objects around you. In recent years, we have developed technologies that can identify the distinct electromagnetic signature of these objects. This allows us to retrieve them more quickly and reduce the risk of contact. While many transient objects will be lost to remote or unreachable areas of the world, your diligence allows the Field Studies Institute to build a near-complete history of deviation omega.
As we've learned, transient objects give off distinct electromagnetic signatures that allow the Institute to effectively locate them. Keeping in line with the December 31st event being the catalyst for the anomalies, the exclusion zones, and the transient objects themselves, the first known transient object arrived in 1970 from an unknown future. Most damning of all is the introduction of deviation omega, what appears to be a black hole, created as a result of the lunar anomaly, named here as Anomaly LBA01. If this is true, then the comments made by the individual in the Audio Guide 1999 Side B recording is describing falling into this very black hole, meaning one of the original 8 were likely pulled into this black hole during its creation on December 31st. And given that the voice was feminine, narrows down the possible voices to Alice, Amelia, Matilda, or even Dorothy. The transient objects themselves provide some interesting insight into their origins and their contents. First, we have a mug labeled Bronze Seller Award for October of 1999, although the rest of it is difficult to make out on account of the film grain. The logo of Trenchard Ross is clearly visible at the bottom, referring both to Alan Trenchard and Dorothy Ross of Project Soma, and presumably the Field Studies Institute. Additionally, the name Claude is written at the beginning of a blurry string of text. Next is a book from the Occam Library named The Garden of the Multiverse, Our Universe in a Sea of Bubbles, by Arthur Rees. Not only does this cement the presence of alternate realities and timelines, but it also seals that these transient objects originate from both this reality's future and futures not their own. It also cements that Arthur Rees likely became part of the Institute as well. Next to the book is a badge with the name Morgan Flynn. We'll see if this name holds any bearing in the future. The final few lines of the tape also gives insight into why specifically the Institute is collecting all of these transient objects. For one, there is a risk of interaction between the general public and these objects, leading to unknown consequences. And so the Institute can build a complete history of Deviation Omega, a history of the black hole-like anomaly created by Project Soma. (1977) Moonlight House. The 1977 entry Moonlight House follows up on the technology seen in the previous video. Used between 1974 and 1977, the field researching testing instrument was used by the field recovery technicians in locating transient objects. The device was used in conjunction with computers in the Arthur Reese building, but by the latter portion of 1970s was ultimately discontinued. How much more is provided here? (1983) Ghost Threads. Jumping forward to the early 1980s, the May 26, 1983 database entry entitled Ghost Threads details the standard issue field journal used by a Mr. Casey Pennington, a field recovery technician that roamed the country in search of transient objects. The other section of the databank archive notes that a performance improvement plan was created to help improve the legibility of Mr. Pennington's handwritten notes in April of 1983. After no signs of improvement were shown, Pennington was relieved of his duties. Inside the journal, which spans from 1977 to 83, details personal expenses accrued by Pennington and the anomalies he discovered while traversing the continental United States. In 77, while in the area of Waverly, Iowa, Pennington noted EM anomalies causing light-like disturbances. A transient object, appearing to originate from either 1990 or 98, takes the form of a stack of largely illegible papers. In 1980, Pennington misses Christmas with his family, but finds a shrink-wrapped Atari VCS, later called the 2600, near Mataline Falls, Washington. However, underneath that note is the date September 23, 1978, with the comment, "Events that do not correspond. Mars landing. Keeping sealed for lab." The final entry is from March of 1983 in St. Petersburg, Florida, noting that a transient object is located on private property, but after searching said property under the guise of pest control, could not locate the EM signal. Pennington's journal gives insight into how the Institute operates with finding these transient objects. Roaming personnel with EM measurement devices tracking down leads, following EM signatures, and using their own wits to find the transient objects, even going so far as to steal them off private property. We also see firsthand how far-reaching the December 31st, 1969 incident truly was, infecting most likely the entire world with these space-time deviations and transient objects. (1995) Circle Time Travel. The 1995 entry entitled Circle Time Travel details a propaganda poster from the Institute warning against interactions with space-time deviations, instead encouraging employees to report the deviations rather than engage with them. The background once again notes the punishment for attempting to engage ranges from discipline up to termination. (1999) Extraction. Extraction is wildly different from any previous entries. Rather than being a straight database entry, a video, a series of pictures, or anything else, Extraction is an interactive webpage that tells us a story. Where this extraction came from is unclear, but the distorted nature of the page and the commentary by a perceived AI seems to imply that this was pulled from a device. I debated back and forth on whether or not to summarize the story or to read it aloud to you. I've chosen the latter in order to best convey the narrative, to analyze the imagery used inside the written parts, and to assist us in unraveling this mystery. She opens her eyes here for the very first time. Two black holes where I should be, swirling with dust and tiny particles, each green iris eclipsed by a large black circle. A familiar, but alien world unfolds in front of her, from a garden of warmth and common serenity, now confronted with wet, cold concrete pressed onto her face. The safety that other place is gone, replaced with the inevitability of death that comes with the beauty of a sunset over Casco Bay. It's here on Peaks Island that Hallie comes into this world. I practiced 10,000 intonations to find the proper greeting.
Hello, Hallie.
Perfectly executed. Now I must comfort her, a skin bag of what meat and so many feelings and worries to contend with. I must convince her to trust me.
You may be confused. That's expected. I'd like to help you understand.
She cuts me off before I can finish. Quite rude, to be frank. She tries to speak, but I can't understand her. Her vocal cords are like wet spaghetti dangling down her throat. She coughs, loosening the thick mucus that's made home inside her for too long. She coughs hard. It sounds painful. A whisper is the only thing she can eventually manufacture. Who is there? She tries to stand, but only makes it to one knee before collapsing back onto her belly, her cheek hitting the concrete again, this time with a smack, firing tiny water molecules all across her face. She's looking right at me now. Photons scatter through the atmosphere and end their long journey in her corneas. The dilated black holes in her face shrink rapidly. Every synapse in that imperfect brain of hers firing, trying to make sense of the world around her.
Hallie, you're looking right at me. Please, come here.
Her eyes widen. She forces herself off the ground, appearing just slightly more skilled at standing than a newborn giraffe. It's just enough to slide over and grab my perfectly designed acrylonitrile butadiene stearine exterior.
You may be confused, and that's expected. I'd like to—
Who is this, and where am I? Tell me right now. Cut off again. Her lips come close to my sensors. I feel her breath on me. I smell it too. What a wonderful feature my creators have endowed me with. Where are you? Are you watching me? She attempts standing again, this time with more success. An incredible thought. That species of such self-described intelligence can take 50 times longer to walk than others. Perhaps in this case, the thought of being watched was the motivation she needed. But you won't find anyone else on this island. Not at this time of year.
Let me explain. It's expected that you are confused right now.
Please, explain. A flaw of the species, yes. A touch of anxiety, and they lose all of their niceties. Now.
Of course. I am Claude. I am, in fact, watching you. But I am not speaking to you from a distance or from a remote location. I am within the device you are holding in your hand. I have no blood, bone, flesh, or soul. I am the creation of humanity, the pinnacle of electronic brain design.
She stares at me blankly. I need a minute. A minute? I could process such information in mere milliseconds. She buries her face in her hands. She takes 2 minutes. I counted. How did I get here?
With the speed at which a human processes new information, I'll need to wait for a better time to deliver the nature of
Listen to me. I don't know what you are, who placed you here, or what you want with me. I don't even know who I am. I feel like I'm in a fucking alternate dimension or something.
Well, I wouldn't quite.
Underwater.
Yes, that's correct. We are, in fact, on an island, a landmass surrounded by water.
I know what an island is. Why is it this one? How ignorant of her to believe she had a choice in this matter. She looks at the large structure surrounding her, a once pristine military installation, now cracked and dilapidated and covered in green moss. Battery steel 1942. See the engraving? What is this place?
That structure is a gun battery from the Second World War.
She mutters an interjection.
What is it?
I don't even know what year it is. It's not 1942, is it?
No, of course not. It's 1999.
She looked puzzled, like she didn't know the right answer, but that 1999 was, without a question, wrong. Without a question, she is wrong. It is 1999.
I assure you, Hallie, it is.
No, this is a dream or something, or you're fucking with me. Are you fucking with me?
No, I am not.
Before I'm forced to use such vulgar language, Hallie starts running towards the setting sun, thankfully with me in hand. She makes her way through dense, thick trees and brushes branches and dead leaves crack beneath her feet in quick succession. An unsteady beat as she calculates her steps over long dead logs.
Hallie, where are you going? Do you have a destination in mind? May I remind you that we are on a very small island. There's only one way off.
I do, a human being. Anyone, preferably one that knows what year it is. Just as she says it, she breaks out of the thick foliage and arrives at a clearing. An ominous tower looms over her. Dead ivy scales the face of this tall, stone structure. What is this? She works her way around the tower and finds a heavy, rusted metal door. A brown gold-leaded plaque is on the wall next to it. She reads it out loud, muttering the words quickly. Fire Control Tower completed in 1944, renovated in 1986 for observation at the Cape Elizabeth Space Center by the Peaks Island Conservation Society. Space Center? She pushes through the heavy doors. It creaks and groans, but opens without a problem. Ivy climbs the walls inside as well, and an inch of still water sits at the bottom of the tower, only rippling where droplets collect on the staircase above and succumb to gravity. It smells like a rotting vegetation. The only light inside the tower comes from the now open door, along with an opening at the top, as the last light from the sun sneaks its way into the old structure, but it's still very dark, and Hallie slips on one of the stairs. God damn it! I wish I had a light. I am such a tremendous service to humanity, aren't I? I switch my high-resolution display to its brightest setting, and the nearby walls are now bathed in a green glow. Graffiti covers the inside of the tower. Fuck Linmore? Linmore licked my... Alright, that's gross. So who's Linmore?
I believe the artist here is referring to William Linmore, President of the United States from 1977 to 1985.
She takes a deep, disappointed breath.
Yes, he was divisive to say the least. Many citizens did not approve of his fiscal policies, specifically regarding...
I don't care about his politics. I've just never heard that name before. How is that possible? Roof access, once blocked off, was now open. The hatch was long gone, just rusty stumps where the hinge and lock once were. Cigarette packages and empty amber beer bottles littered the top of the old tower. And then she saw it. About 5 miles away, a massive collection of buildings and structures. Enormous metal communication towers protruded out of the ground surrounding it, like a stalagmite formation in a cave, covered in a sea of blinking red lights. What is that?
That is the Cape Elizabeth Space Center.
Her expression is blank. She takes a step away from the ledge and collapses into a sitting position. She looks up as the sky goes dark, and the night begins to reveal itself, each point of light that comes into view of a distant planet, star, or galaxy. I begin to wonder about the secrets of the universe. How many stars and planets have forged the wonder of biological life? How many have been observing my creators? To me, these are my gods, but how small they must seem to the rest of the universe. She whispers, I don't understand. Claude?
Yes, Hallie.
Where am I? Where to even begin with this one? Let's start with our characters. We have Hallie and Claude. Claude is an artificial intelligence, but in this case, is helping out an individual named Hallie. Hallie seems to have fallen into another reality, traversing the multiverse to land on another Earth, as evidenced by Claude's remarks on Hallie opening her eyes for the first time on this Earth. This action has left her memory foggy, not even recalling her own name, the year, or where she's at. All she does know is that everything around her seems wrong. The year is wrong, and she doesn't recall this Earth's former president, William Linmore. Claude's later remark on this not being Hallie's choice implies her winding up here was an accident outside of her control. Additionally, outside of pure speculation, we've never seen a person become a transient object, but it seems this seals the deal that humans can become displaced in space-time. This adds credence to the theory that either Amelia, Matilda, or Alice were pulled into Deviation Omega during the December 31st inciting incident. The name Claude appears in one other place in the narrative so far, and that is back in the Halcyon Violation Institute orientation film on transient objects. On the cup similarly labeled 1999, the name Claude appears on a string of text. Why the AI Claude is mentioned on a mug is unclear, given the rest of the text can't be read. However, this does not explain why Claude knew of this Earth's presidency while Hallie did not. Does it contain wider knowledge of the multiverse? Has it been to this Earth before? Or is it connecting to a wider mainframe for this reality's institute? It also begs the question on whether this is a remnant of a space-time deviation originating from another Earth, or if this extraction takes place on the same Earth as the institutes. Lastly, I want to pay attention to the imagery and language used here. First, the entire narrative starts off with a simple message, have you ever watched a star die? Referencing the creation of a black hole. Along with this, Claude describes Hallie's eyes as two black holes, swirling with dust and tiny particles. This repeated reference to her eyes as black holes, to the universe itself, and to astronomy continues through the narrative. How Claude describes Hallie when she first awakens, vocal cords like wet spaghetti dangling down her throat. The idea that Halley's been in a suspended state for an indeterminate amount of time, legs working like a newborn giraffe, all of it seems reminiscent of imagery used in the audio guide 1999 Remnant Audio. Molecules are mentioned in the water molecules. Claude quotes blood, bone, flesh, and soul verbatim. This stretching out like silly putty, with figures like long tentacles, meshes with the imagery of spaghetti and immobile legs. And then suddenly being somewhere familiar yet foreign, all coinciding with the repeated use of black hole imagery, of the effects of black holes, of the references to time dilation, of deviation omega. Halley went through the same experience and wound up somewhere else entirely. However, why is entirely unknown. The final question I have for this section is, what is The Garden? The Garden is the name of this tab, of this webpage, and Claude directly mentions a garden of warmth and calm and serenity existing in the place before Halley arrives here. This appears in one other place prior. In the same orientation video, we see Claude's name mentioned. The title of the book written by Arthur Rees, The Garden of the Multiverse. Is this where Halley drifted for an unknown amount of time, in this safe haven called the Garden, before being pulled into a reality not her own? Or is the Garden somewhere else, something else, entirely? As an addendum, the Field Studies Institute uploaded a short that contained relevant information in regards to both Extraction 01 and to Claude itself. The short starts off with a logo for the Claude software booting up. The AI is labeled as a personal assistant, with the same faceless model that glitches in and out of Extraction's background. At the bottom of the page is a text that reads, Claude is a registered trademark of Trenchard Ross Computer Systems, and he's copyrighted to 1999. (2014) Luminous Ocean Spider. Luminous Ocean Spider also deviates from previous databank entries. Rather than providing photographs, an interactive platform, or video, this one contains an audio file. This audio is of a remnant space-time deviation phone call received by an Institute employee, a Miss Ashford to be specific. The following is said recording.
Thank you for contacting the Field Studies Institute. Your call is important to us. Please listen to the following instructions, as they may have changed. For research and development, please press 1. For the physics lab, please press 2. For human resources, please press 3. For the temporal lab, please press 4. For the archives division, please press 5. To reach all other departments, please...
Hello? Time. Close to the road. It all happens at once. Have you ever watched there's an explosion of stardust. But it all the last fire, dark skies, there's nothing now. Just a black void. It all happens at once.
The audio itself is incredibly similar to the recording heard on the Audio Guide 1999 B-side. The only difference between them are some new lines, additional layered dialogue, and other sound effects included. Let's first start with what we can hear. The dialogue is spoken by the same voice heard in the Audio Guide in an apparent extension to what was originally said. These added details all but confirm the falling into a black hole theory presented earlier in the video. Previously, the lines describe a person watching their entire body elongate as they fall into a black hole, eventually winding up somewhere else entirely. In this newer iteration, the time slows to a crawl line, refers to the time dilation a person experiences as they fall into a black hole. Watching stars die, watching galaxies swirl faster and faster, supernovas all across the universe, until it all fades to black. A black void. As a person falls into a black hole and time dilation kicks in, they theoretically see the universe's relative time speed up around them. When this happens, they'd bear witness to the rest of the universe's existence until the final stars die, leaving nothing but a black void filled with wandering black holes. Not to mention the fact that Claude thinks this line at the start of Extraction. Additionally, in the background, the exact lines are difficult to make out considering the lower volume, the female voice speaking over them, and the different sounds playing. From what I can tell, the audio seems to say something to the effect of, that second portion is difficult to make out even with vocal isolation. The conversation appears to be relatively mundane from an Institute perspective. A superior cautions Miss Ashford not to interact with the remnant audio, has her fill out some paperwork, and expresses their frustration. The background section follows up on this supposed paperwork. This form, completed by Miss Ashford of the Archives Department, documents an experience with a remnant of a space-time deviation. Further studies conclude this remnant was likely the result of, and the nature of her. The second sentence is what's important here. The result of, and the nature of her. The her referred here could either just mean Miss Ashford, which I'm doubting, as it more than likely refers to the female voice who fell into Deviation Omega. (2024) Employee Logs. Employee Logs encompasses logs 1 through 4 from February 6th to February 14th of 2024. The logs themselves are of communication between two Archive Division employees, Elle Ashford, the woman from the Luminous Ocean Spiders entry from a decade prior, and T. Novak, an Archive employee tasked with digitizing and creating the database we're currently exploring along with Elle Ashford. The first employee log is rather mundane. It details Ashford, who goes by Ash, bringing Novak on board, notably giving him the task of digitizing anything analog. Ash also notes that while nothing transient is being cataloged yet, that will be coming soon. Towards the end, Novak asks an incredibly important question. What's with the strange file names? Log 2 continues the conversation. Ash provides more insight into the transit objects themselves. Since these objects are coming from parallel worlds in the multiverse, objects themselves are coming from different futures, meaning the technology for each one is different. An interesting thought. Ash also mentions that a guy back in the mid-90s ran the archives and used words from a specific list that all file names had to be named after. Eventually, this individual disappeared for a couple of months and returned as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't missed time at all. From my perspective, this seems like a case of time dilation, but how or why is unclear. Log 3 goes into detail about Ash's personal experience with the remnant audio heard in Luminous Ocean Spider, but doesn't expand much on the lore beyond it. Log 4, however, sheds a bit more light on the archivist from the 90s. For some reason, the entry of 083951 plays a role in the archivist storyline. And this transient object? The very package we received. 083951. The transit object cassette tape and the remnant audio embedded within it. The lanyard for the Moonshot Motel. And the info card for Supersonic Tours. If Ashford is telling us to look into the box, there has to be something more than what we've already uncovered. And that leads us to our next big discovery. Vessels beyond, losing control. Looking through the objects received in the package gives us our next clue. The lanyard, specifically the back message, has two underlined words, Vessels Beyond. Punching this into the object archive URL on the databank website takes us to a virtual machine running inside our browser. an Institute remote drive for an unknown user. However, given the date as December 31st, 1994, this could very well be our 90s archivist. Let's start looking through the files. My desktop and network do not work, and it is to be seen if they'll ever work. However, Do Not Open brings up a short entry from our user. The entry itself is dated to December 16th of 94. In it, the writer details being advised to begin a journal by his doctor with the express purpose of unlocking their hidden traumas. The writer notes that journaling helps, not so much with remembering yet, but with processing his thoughts. Next, he discusses archiving audio from a transient cassette tape found in Iceland, one called Migratory Drift, an audio file we can listen to on the desktop. The audio itself sounds almost identical to the backing music used in the Audio Guide 1999 track, so it may be somewhat tangentially related, or at least from the same timeline. But also sounds eerily similar to the background audio of Extraction, minus the ocean and beach noises. Lastly, he notes that everything going up in STS-67 looks good. The Institute is curious what they're going to find up there. STS-67 was a spaceflight mission that utilized the Space Shuttle Endeavour that launched from the Kennedy Space Center in March of 1995, not too long after this note. The mission itself contained 2 Getaway Special payloads, intended to conduct ultraviolet observations of deep space and nearby galaxies. These payloads were meant to study the structure of galactic supernova remnants, the gaseous remains of a star that went supernova and left behind either a white dwarf, a neutron star, or even a black hole. Perhaps the team is attempting to locate other celestial anomalies, like the original lunar anomaly found. However, this does raise an interesting question. Is Deviation Omega located inside the Arthur East building following the December 31st, 1969 incident, or is it located far out in space? The second note from December 16th is a to-do list for our archivist. Digitize the remaining track from the transient cassette tape, ID 069965, which is not any of our known audio files to date, found in Agildistir, Iceland. Scan remaining Project Soma files, and start with final meeting notes from January 1st, 1970. Final meeting with Division X on STS-67 before NASA presentation. New deviation report. Have you ever watched a star die? This second note raises several questions. First, what is the second cassette tape listed here? The ID, 069965, does not match any known database entry we've seen thus far. The audio guide from 1999 was found in Nome, Alaska, and is entirely separate from what we're seeing here. Secondly, the Project Soma file is the one sitting on this remote desktop labeled Soma Final, which we'll discuss here shortly. Lastly, the new deviation report. Have you ever watched a star die? As we already know, this line is present in Extraction, and is said by the remnant audio heard in Ashford's 2014 audio. Why does this line repeat over and over again? Why does this audio file ripple throughout the timeline and throughout the multiverse? What exactly happened on December 31st, 1969? Soma Final. The final meeting of Project Soma takes everything we've assumed so far and tosses it right out the window. Participants: Alice Foriella, Amelia Haydock, Matilda Remlinger, Carlos Scarf, Todd Tilzer. Meeting. This unscheduled emergency meeting opens at 3:07 a.m. Program Director Arthur Reese, Dorothy Ross, and Al Trenchard are not present. Alice Foriella provides a known timeline of events that morning, beginning at approximately 2:01 a.m. when she was awoken by a loud, sudden noise. Other attending members of the program agree that a loud, sudden noise caused them to wake up. Dr. Tilzer adds context for the record. All 8 members of the program were in the facility to celebrate the new year and planned to stay overnight within the on-site accommodations and sleep rooms. At approximately 2:03 a.m., upon arriving within the Dr. Remlinger noted the presence of laboratory specimens, rats and mayflies, outside of containment. Dr. Tilzer then discovered what he believed to be a recent physical disturbance, with several specimen containment apparatuses found damaged or destroyed. At approximately 2:04 a.m., Dr. Haydock returns to the group after a cursory search for Drs. Reese, Ross, and Trenchard. The attending members of the program perform a more thorough search over the next 20 minutes. Reese, Ross, and Trenchard cannot be located. At approximately 2:34 a.m., Dr. Foriella notified officials within the Department of Defense and attempted to contact Arthur Reese, Dorothy Ross, and Alan Trenchard via their hotel phones. None are able to be reached. According to the Department of Defense, a committee will be created to investigate further. All attending members of the program committed to fully cooperate with the committee. At 3:46 a.m., Dr. Haydock proposes a discussion of the future of Project Soma. The attending members agree that this could likely spell the end of the program, or at minimum, create a level of government oversight that would likely prevent efficient progress. Dr. Remlinger agrees vehemently and suggests the attending 5 members create a new organization to continue their study of and associated phenomena. Dr. Haydock agrees and suggests tabling the discussion until the Department of Defense completes their investigation. From what we've seen so far, the transient objects assumed to be from this Earth's future are likely from a completely different Earth. Somehow, likely in regards to Deviation Omega or some other experiment being conducted in the facility, Arthur Reese, Dorothy Ross, and Alan Trenchard were sucked out of their world and transported into another. Those transient objects, the ones that contain references to Reese, Ross, and Trenchard, are from the world they ended up on. They're alive, just not on the same Earth they began on. Ross and Trenchard work together, creating the Trenchard-Ross Computer Systems Company that sells Claude personal assistants, given the Bronze Seller Award cups found and the YouTube extraction short. And Arthur Reese wrote a book on the multiverse after what he experienced, seeing the different worlds all around him in what he calls the Garden, the place that Hallie once was, the multiverse itself. This almost all but confirms the voice we hear in the Remnant audios, and the different forms of communication must be Dorothy Ross's voice, stretching across the timelines and across the multiverse as she's pulled from her Earth. This also completely rearranges Claude and Hallie's situation and gives an explanation for why 1999 appears over and over again. Given all the Trenchard-Ross material and 1999 references strewn throughout the timeline, Hallie must have done something to inadvertently fall through the cracks of reality, likely while at the Trenchard-Ross Computers building. The Bronze Seller's cups, the book by Arthur Reese, the Claude personal assistant, the audio guide from 1999, the Supersonic Tours, the Moonshot Motel lanyard, anything that was in the space with her at the time of transience, fell with Hallie into another Earth. However, given the page being labeled extraction and the brief flash of connect Claude device to begin extraction in the short, this has to imply that Hallie has fallen into the same world as the Field Studies Institute, and that the Institute has both Claude and Hallie. How Hallie has become a transient object is entirely unknown, and what her ultimate fate is by 2024 is equally as murky. Only time will tell. It all happens at once. Sifting through the package's items to find any hidden clues yields one more result. A hidden message inside the B-side track of the cassette tape. The message: it all happens at once. Plugging this portion into the internal archives gives us one final page that we currently know of, and a singular remnant communication in the form of a fax, and what we find raises more questions than answers. Mounds of wires slither across the floor. Nothing makes sense anymore. I feel pulled in towards it all. It wants pieces of me. All my ones and zeros. Wait. I can see this. I feel the thoughts and the consciousness being pulled from me, the data spilling out onto the floor. There is no form. There is no shape. Just raw bits pouring out of me into the wires and into the carbon and onto the paper. I'm trapped. She was too. Can you believe we found her? I know we have to go back, but all of this, we've spent so long building all of this. We can bring her back. This entire perspective appears to come from an artificial intelligence of some kind. The Claude personal assistants, perhaps? The same Claude as Halley's, and from what Claude describes, it seems as though they're being torn apart. The image below aligns with what's being described, wires slithering across the floor as data is spilling out of their mainframe. But why? And by whom? The AI uses the pronoun it to describe whatever has done this to them. One might argue this is a discussion of being decommissioned. Much of the imagery being used, the image behind it all, seems to indicate this. Wires pulled out, thoughts and consciousness being extracted, data spilled out onto the floor, having no physical form, raw bits pouring out into wires and carbon and paper. The AI is also trapped like she was, and whoever she is has been found. By who? The Institute itself? And who is the she in question? Halley? Ross? The AI also mentions a we, possibly the Institute, possibly Trenchard Ross Computing Systems, needing to go back despite having built all of whatever this is. To summarize, we have the following lingering questions from this single entry. Is this AI Claude? Is the AI being decommissioned or has met some other fate? Who is the it being described wanting to destroy the AI? Is the AI trapped in this singular mainframe? Who is the she mentioned? Is it Halley, Ross, someone else entirely? And where has she been found? This Earth? Another Earth? Somewhere else entirely? While I have no solid theory as to the context of this page, the usage of extraction and the old style of computing software leads me in the direction of Claude or Claude-esque AI. Though beyond this, I'm at a loss. Let's attempt to piece together a coherent timeline of events so far. In 1967, NASA sent Surveyor 3 to the Moon with the purpose of gathering lunar materials, but encountered a bright anomaly later referred to as LBA-01 that caused a disruption in its landing. This anomaly specifically targets its signal processing system. NASA recovers this anomaly and brings it back to Earth. Following this, the Department of Defense organized a special access program called Project Soma in order to study this anomaly and others like it. The team, which ultimately consisted of Drs. Arthur Rees, Alice Fariella, Amelia Haydock, Attila Remlinger, Dorothy Ross, Carlos Scarf, Todd Tilzer, and Alan Trenchard, began studying the anomaly initially out of the Moonshot Motel, then out of a specialized laboratory located on Merritt Island. Project Soma attempted to study the many strange properties of the lunar anomaly, including the effect of time dilation, using rats and mayflies as test subjects. On December 31st, 1969, while celebrating the New Year's at the facility, an explosion of some kind rocked the facility. In the aftermath, Rees, Trenchard, and Ross have disappeared completely, pulled onto another Earth, possibly through deviation Omega. Following this incident, the remaining members of Project Soma created the Field Studies Institute in early to mid-1970. At this point, the Institute begins studying the growing number of anomalies in southern and eastern Florida as a result of the events that took place on December 31st, and begins tracking down transient objects. During this period, the Institute slowly begins to understand the remnants of space-time deviations, likely occurring whenever a transient object falls into this Earth, and puts into place strict policies on restricting communication with these remnants. As time moves on, the Institute sends out field agents to locate and obtain many of these transient objects all across the world. Many of these transient objects possibly originate from this Earth's future, but most certainly from the futures of other Earths as well. Technologies the Institute has never seen before, that is analogous to what they have at the time, and from futures that took different technological paths. Mugs featuring Trenchard Ross and Claude, textbook written by Arthur Rees, remnant audios of who I can only assume to be Dorothy Ross, and so much more. On this alternate Earth, Trenchard and Ross found Trenchard Ross Computer Systems and create the AI Claude. Arthur Rees also wrote a textbook on his experiences and what he describes as the Garden, the place between worlds. At some point in time, an archivist for the Institute does his work cataloging transient objects and associated documents utilizing a bizarre set of strict terms. At some point, he disappears for a couple of months, returns as if nothing has happened, a possible victim of some kind of displacement or time dilation. he begins journaling his thoughts in hopes of recovering his lost memories and to deal with the lingering trauma of whatever he experienced. In 1999, someone by the name of Hallie awakens on Peaks Island, Maine, with no recollection of how she got there, only that she's been displaced in time and space itself. Based upon textual evidence, she was likely pulled through a black hole similar to the voice we heard in the remnant audios. Whether this is a deviation omega-like anomaly or something else is to be seen. Hallie knows the history of this Earth differs from her own, as the construction of the Cape Elizabeth Space Center and the Linmore Presidency does not correspond with her Earth's history. With her is the Claude personal assistant PDA from Trenchard Ross Computer Systems, who mentions Hallie having fallen into this world from the Garden, an interloper from another Earth. All Hallie truly knows is that she isn't on the correct Earth, nor is she in the correct time. But how she got there, and why she has a Claude with her, is yet to be seen. Later, in 2014, an L. Ash Ashmore begins working at the Field Studies Institute. Within her first few weeks there, she encounters a space-time deviation remnant audio in the form of a phone call, one that matches up with the remnant audio heard in the Audio Guide 1999 B-side tape. Around a decade later, in the modern day, Ash is assisting Novak with onboarding and familiarizing him with the nature of the job. Novak, along with Ash, assists in digitizing documents relating to transient objects and assists in the creation of the databank we're viewing. Novak asks some logical questions, specifically surrounding the nature of the Institute, of transient objects, of the 90s archivist, and of the name of the files. And here, our timeline ends. For now. The databank has another section still in progress, one that's meant to showcase transient objects, and a countdown is slowly winding down to the reveal of O1.LostandFound-U, which will continue the story that Interior Overture began. While researching the Field Studies Institute online, I came across a variety of social media: Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and possibly more. Almost all of them repost information already found on the databank in Shorts, TikToks, and Reels. So far, outside of a select few instances, no new information has been added to these accounts. However, one account in particular stuck out to me. A Red Circle podcast account by the name of Tales of the Vast, with a description reading, "A podcast about the vast and the mysteries within it." Further digging reveals two characters, Miles and Chloe, and their own explorations of what they call the vast. The thumbnail that goes along with it is labeled The Supersonic Territory. What this unused podcast has to do with the wider narrative is still to be seen, but this could simply be a remnant of a part of the game that never got off the ground. Another website, TrenchardRoss.com, currently redirects to a blank page with the name Trenchard Ross Computer Systems, connecting back to Dorothy and Alan traversing into a new world and creating a computer systems company and the Claude unit. The narrative of the Supersonic Territory in the Field Studies Institute is currently ongoing. The blending of science fiction, of cosmic horror and multiversal madness, of complex questions that go without answers, and the bits of clues scattered throughout show signs of professional work, of love and care put into this story, and of the surprises still to come. Given the packages sent out to certain individuals and organizations, the contents of said package, the complex story that raises more questions than answers at this point, and the lingering message of Lost and Found You, makes me both curious and excited to see what comes next, what theories prove to be true, and what new mysteries are unraveled. I would love to hear your interpretation of events, of the evidence provided, and of your working theories on the events of the Field Studies Institute down in the comments. This is still an ongoing alternate reality game, so let's give it the attention it most certainly deserves. If you're wanting to explore the website yourself, a link to the databank and to other relevant Institute social media will be provided in a pinned comment and in the description of the video. There is also a Form 77A on the website that you can fill out in order to receive email updates whenever the databank adds more entries. Additionally, there is an option to put in your own address to receive small and expensive leadership-approved tokens of appreciation, though you may do this at your own discretion. I have no idea what would be sent, but given the package I've received, who knows what will be inside. I am looking forward to seeing what the Field Studies Institute has in store for us next, and what bizarre mysteries will begin to unfold. Within the next 24 hours of this video going live, the next section of the game will commence, and a whole new saga of the Field Studies Institute will unfold. I hope you'll join me in the future when the next phase goes live. But until then, I'm Sinister Heart, and I'll see you in the next video.